The Soviet Union was like a giant, casting a long shadow over the 20th century. Its influence was felt far and wide, from the icy tundras of Siberia to the bustling streets of New York City. The Soviet Union was not just a country, it was an idea, a symbol of a different way of life, a different way of thinking. For decades, it stood as a rival to the United States, shaping global politics and ideology. The Cold War was more than just a geopolitical struggle, it was a battle of ideologies, a clash between capitalism and communism. Propaganda from both sides painted the other as the enemy, creating a world divided by fear and suspicion. Its story is one of revolution, ambition, and ultimately, collapse. The October Revolution of 1917 marked the beginning of a new era, as the Bolsheviks seized power and set out to create a socialist utopia. The Soviet Union's role in World War II further solidified its status as a global superpower, but the cracks in its foundation were already beginning to show. Understanding the Soviet Union's rise and fall helps us make sense of the world we live in today. The legacy of the Soviet Union is still evident in modern-day Russia and the former Soviet republics. The political, economic, and social systems in these countries have been shaped by their Soviet past, and the influence of Soviet ideology can still be seen in their policies and practices. From its revolutionary beginnings to its superpower status and eventual disintegration, the Soviet Union's impact is undeniable. The Soviet Union was a pioneer in many fields, from space exploration to military technology. Its achievements were a source of national pride, but they also came at a great cost, as the government prioritized its ambitions over the well-being of its people. This essay explores the key events and figures that shaped the Soviet Union. We will look at the leaders who defined its policies and the events that marked its history. From Lenin's vision of a socialist state to Stalin's brutal regime, the Soviet Union was shaped by the ambitions and actions of its leaders. We will delve into the tumultuous years of the Russian Revolution and the rise of the Bolsheviks. The revolution was a time of great upheaval and change, as the old order was overthrown and a new one was established. The Bolsheviks, led by Lenin, promised a better future for the working class, but their rise to power was marked by violence and repression. We will examine the leadership of Lenin, the iron fist of Stalin, and the challenges of the Cold War. Lenin's policies laid the foundation for the Soviet state, but it was Stalin who truly transformed it into a superpower. His rule was characterized by purges, forced collectivization, and a relentless drive to industrialize the country. The Cold War brought new challenges, as the Soviet Union faced off against the United States in a struggle for global dominance. Finally, we will analyze the factors that led to the Soviet Union's demise. Economic stagnation, political corruption, and a growing disillusionment with the communist system all contributed to its collapse. The reforms introduced by Mikhail Gorbachev in the 1980s, while well-intentioned, ultimately hastened the end of the Soviet Union, as they exposed the deep-seated problems within the system. By understanding its history, we gain valuable insights into the forces that shape nations and the enduring power of ideas. The Soviet Union may be gone, but its legacy lives on, reminding us of the power of ideology and the impact of history on our present and future. The lessons learned from the Soviet experience continue to resonate, offering valuable insights into the complexities of governance, the dangers of totalitarianism, and the enduring struggle for freedom and justice. Russia, in the early 20th century, was a land of stark contrasts. It was a vast empire stretching from Europe to Asia, rich in natural resources and cultural heritage. Vast wealth and imperial grandeur existed alongside widespread poverty and social unrest. The opulence of the nobility stood in sharp contrast to the dire conditions faced by the peasants and working class. The Romanov dynasty, which had ruled Russia for centuries, faced growing discontent. The gap between the ruling elite and the common people had never been wider, and the cries for reform grew louder with each passing day. World War I, with its devastating losses and economic hardships, proved to be the breaking point. The war drained the country's resources, and the front lines were filled with young Russian men who faced unimaginable horrors. In February 1917, bread riots erupted in Petrograd, the capital city. The people, driven by hunger and frustration, took to the streets demanding food and change. The Tsar, Nicholas II, seemed unable or unwilling to address the people's suffering. His detachment from the realities of his subjects' lives only fueled the growing anger and resentment. As unrest spread, the army, once a symbol of Tsarist power, began to waver in its loyalty. Soldiers, many of whom were peasants themselves, sympathized with the protesters and began to question their allegiance to the Tsar. In March 1917, Nicholas II abdicated, ending centuries of Romanov rule. His abdication marked the end of an era and the beginning of a tumultuous period in Russian history. A provisional government was formed, but it would prove short-lived. The new government struggled to maintain order and address the myriad issues facing the nation. Russia was on the brink of a profound transformation. The fall of the Tsar set the stage for the Russian Revolution, a period of radical change that would reshape the country's political, social, and economic landscape forever. The Bolsheviks, led by Vladimir Lenin, seized the opportunity to push their revolutionary agenda. They promised peace, land, and bread to the war-weary and impoverished masses. In October 1917, the Bolsheviks launched a successful coup known as the October Revolution. They stormed the Winter Palace and took control of the government, setting the stage for the establishment of the Soviet Union. The revolution, however, was just the beginning. Russia would soon be plunged into a brutal civil war between the Red Army, loyal to the Bolsheviks, and the White Army, composed of various anti-Bolshevik factions. The civil war left the country devastated, but the Bolsheviks emerged victorious. The Soviet Union was officially established in 1922, marking the start of a new chapter in Russian history. Under Lenin's leadership, and later Joseph Stalin's, the Soviet Union embarked on a path of rapid industrialization and centralization of power. The fall of the Tsar had set in motion a series of events that would change the world forever. The legacy of the fall of the Tsar and the subsequent revolution continues to shape Russia to this day. It serves as a powerful reminder of the impact of social and political upheaval on the course of history. In the chaos following the Tsar's abdication, a new force emerged, the Bolsheviks, led by the charismatic and ruthless Vladimir Lenin. Lenin, a Marxist revolutionary, saw an opportunity to seize power and create a socialist state. He promised peace, land, and bread to the war-weary and impoverished masses. In October 1917, the Bolsheviks launched a successful armed uprising, overthrowing the provisional government. This event, known as the October Revolution, marked the beginning of the Soviet era. Lenin and the Bolsheviks quickly consolidated their power, establishing a one-party state and implementing radical socialist policies. Private property was abolished and industries were nationalized. The Russian Empire was no more, replaced by the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, commonly known as the Soviet Union. Section 4, Stalin's Iron Grip, Terror and Transformation. Following Lenin's death in 1924, a power struggle erupted within the Bolshevik Party. Joseph Stalin, a cunning and ruthless politician, emerged victorious. Under Stalin's leadership, the Soviet Union underwent a period of rapid industrialization and forced collectivization of agriculture. Stalin's rule was marked by terror and repression. Millions of perceived enemies of the state were executed or sent to labor camps in the Gulag system. This period, known as the Great Purge, aimed to eliminate any opposition to Stalin's rule and consolidate his power. Despite the human cost, Stalin's policies transformed the Soviet Union into an industrial and military power. Section 5. The Great Patriotic War, Soviet Triumph, Global Impact. This chapter delves into the monumental struggle and eventual victory of the Soviet Union during World War II, a conflict that reshaped the global order. In 1941, Nazi Germany launched a surprise attack on the Soviet Union, breaking their non-aggression pact. This invasion, known as Operation Barbarossa, was the largest military operation in history in terms of manpower and casualties. The ensuing conflict, known as the Great Patriotic War in the Soviet Union and as the Eastern Front of World War II, was one of the most brutal and costly conflicts in human history. The Eastern Front saw some of the largest and deadliest battles, with millions of soldiers and civilians caught in the crossfire. The Soviet people endured unimaginable hardships during the war. They faced constant bombardment, severe shortages of food and supplies, and the ever-present threat of death. Families were torn apart and entire communities were displaced. Cities were reduced to rubble. Millions perished from combat, famine, and disease. The scale of destruction was unprecedented, with entire cities like Stalingrad and Leningrad facing near total annihilation. However, the Soviet people rallied against the Nazi invaders, displaying extraordinary courage and resilience. Men and women alike took up arms, and even children contributed to the war effort in any way they could. The spirit of resistance was unbreakable. The Red Army, after suffering early setbacks, eventually pushed back the German forces. Through sheer determination and strategic brilliance, they managed to turn the tide of the war. The harsh winters and vast landscapes of the Soviet Union also played a crucial role in hampering the German advance. The Battle of Stalingrad, a turning point in the war, marked the beginning of the end for Nazi Germany. This brutal battle lasted for months and resulted in a decisive Soviet victory. It was a testament to the Soviet willpower and military strategy. The Soviet victory in the war came at a tremendous cost, but it solidified the USSR's status as a global superpower. The end of the war saw the Soviet Union emerge not only as a victor but also as a dominant force on the world stage. This triumph had far-reaching implications, influencing global politics and the balance of power for decades to come. In the aftermath of the war, the Soviet Union embarked on a massive reconstruction effort. Despite the immense losses, the nation was determined to rebuild and recover. This period saw significant advancements in industry, science, and technology, laying the groundwork for the Soviet Union's future achievements. The post-war era also marked the beginning of the space race, with the Soviet Union achieving remarkable milestones, including launching the first human, Yuri Gagarin, into space. These achievements further cemented the USSR's status as a superpower and showcased its technological prowess. However, the victory and subsequent rise of the Soviet Union also set the stage for the Cold War, a period of intense rivalry and tension between the USSR and the United States. This era was characterized by a constant struggle for global influence, with both superpowers vying for dominance in various spheres, from military might to ideological supremacy. Despite the challenges and the looming threat of nuclear conflict, the Soviet Union made significant cultural and social strides. The resilience and determination of the Soviet people during and after the war left an indelible mark on history, shaping the world we live in today. The legacy of the Great Patriotic War and the Soviet triumph continues to be felt across the globe. It serves as a powerful reminder of the sacrifices made and the enduring spirit of a nation that rose from the ashes of war to become a global superpower.